Welcome back to State of Belief Radio. I'm Welton Gaddy. A lot of us chuckled at presidential candidate Mitt Romney's exasperated assertion that corporations are people too, my friend. But now it's no joke. That premise is likely to be tested in a new and frightening way this coming week as the Supreme Court of the United States hears oral arguments in the Hobby Lobby case. Joining me now to discuss what could come out of this is Dr. J. Michaelson, always a knowledgeable voice on attempts to redefine religious liberty in this country. Jay, welcome back to State of Belief Radio.
Pleasure as always, Welton.
You're going to be at the court for this case. Are you excited or worried?
I got to say I'm worried. Observers in the court think this is going to be a very close case. The religious liberty, so-called religious liberty movement really had the wind knocked out of it in Arizona with the defeat of the Turn the Gays Away bill. But the odds are we may lose this one. And I think a lot of folks are not aware of how significant a case this could be for all of us in America.
I want you to give us a quick overview, but I also want to make a comment before you do, because if anybody's just listening, they really need to listen fully at this moment, because in my opinion, I think in yours too, this case is a game changer. If given the wrong decision here, we'll be looking at religious liberty through entirely different lens and be going a direction this nation has not gone since its founding.
Well, that's absolutely right. Everybody's in favor of religious liberty, right? So nobody's on the opposition side to that. The question is whether, what the parameters of that are, whether I can use my religious liberty not just as a shield against others or against the government, but as a sword to actually take away other people's rights. That's the first major question of Hobby Lobby, whether religious liberty is a sword as well as a shield. Mm-hmm. The second question is whether corporations, like you said, corporations not only are people, but do they have souls? Are corporations going to go to either heaven or hell? Can they sin or can they be saved? Which sounds like a joke, but that's actually the premise, the second major point of Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby is a huge corporation. They have 21,000 employees and 550 stores around the country. They are owned by a sincerely devout religious family that has particular religious views that nobody's criticizing or calling into question. But the owners believe that their religious beliefs should now be imputed onto the company. And so as a result, the company shouldn't be required to provide contraception coverage as part of their insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. This is a huge change. So right now, already, Obamacare has exemptions for churches, for religious organizations, and even organizations that are just religiously affiliated. So if you run a hospital, a Catholic hospital, for example, you don't have to provide any kind of health insurance necessarily for your employees. The question now is whether that exemption also applies to corporations, whether corporations have a conscience, and if so, whether that conscience can be used as a sword against the rights of their employees.
You wrote in the foreword about Hobby Lobby, about how it pits religious liberty against reproductive rights, and I'd like for you to talk about that part of the argument, but I want you also, if you will, to go beyond it, because whatever the ruling is related to reproductive rights here has implications for all of the cases related to religious liberty.
Absolutely, and let's make no mistake. This is actually religion versus religion. It's not as though it's just religion versus some secular human rights claim on the other side. For example, my religion, Judaism, contraception is fully acceptable. There's no teaching against contraception in the Jewish tradition. And in fact, by the way, about 80% of Americans think that there's absolutely no problem with contraception. What Hobby Lobby wants to do is make their owners' religious beliefs trump the religious beliefs of all of their employees. So if I'm a practicing, believing Christian and working at Hobby Lobby, and I believe that contraception is a morally correct choice for me, the owners of the company want to make that decision for me. They want to take away my right to make a religious decision and supplant it by their religious decision. And as you point out, this doesn't just apply to birth control, contraception. This also can apply to anything. So if a corporation can choose not to obey the Affordable Care Act, well, they should be able to not obey non-discrimination laws. So this is really the same case that we saw in Arizona with the Turn the Gays Away law that was vetoed by Governor Jan Brewer. If a company, a large company, let's say McDonald's or Burger King, it could be any large corporation, has owners who have a particular religious view, what Hobby Lobby is arguing is that religious view could get them out of any law at all, including a non-discrimination law. So turn the gays away, or turn the Jews away, or turn the mixed-race couples away. Whatever someone believes violates their religious conscience, their corporation, not just them individually, their corporation could then get out of all kinds of laws on the basis of it.
Jay, how did we get here? Where an individual's religious conscience can be overruled by a corporate religious conscience. How did we get here?
Well, the main answer to that is a whole lot of skillful money and resources from a small group of very conservative Catholics and some evangelicals who are allied with them, conservative evangelicals, that is. There has been a tremendous amount of money going into organizations like that listeners may not have heard of, like the Beckett Fund, the law firm that's putting forward this case. The Alliance Defending Freedom, I guess, a little bit better known, usually formerly known as the Alliance Defense Fund. These organizations are working in the courts and in legislatures around the country to redefine, just like we said at the top, religious liberty, and to say that my religious liberty allows me to bully another person or to shame another person or to deny access to health care to another person. And that's really how we got here. I would just say as a footnote, this is a tricky case because it's also about Obamacare. Mm-hmm. And even though it has these consequences that go far beyond that context, the reality is this is not a Supreme Court that's a big fan of Obamacare. The individual mandate itself just barely survived, really on a technicality in that case. And this is a court that has been willing to find rights for corporations, as evidenced by the Citizens United case about corporations having free speech rights, which is why Mitt Romney could say that corporations are people. So those footnotes make this an even harder case and one that we should all be quite worried about.
This past week, I was happy to sign on to a statement from the Religious Institute, along with many other diverse faith leaders, demanding freedom of conscience for those Americans who do not believe contraception to be against their values. In fact, there are many moral arguments to be made in favor of deliberate reproductive decision-making. Share some of your thoughts about that, Jay.
Well, I only wish that I could put a megaphone in front of what you just said and that petition that the Religious Institute put around. It's like deja vu all over again. We're seeing the right is depicting this as religious people on one side and anti-religious people on the other. And that's just not true. There are a number of important positive religious values around family planning. Not least the impact of what it's like to bring a child into this world if you're not prepared financially or emotionally or in a relationship, if appropriate, to raise that child properly. And the idea that, sometimes you hear, well, this is only about insurance coverage. You could just go out and buy contraception. You don't need insurance coverage for it. But that's not true. I mean, contraception can run between $500 and $1,000 a year, and that's a significant amount of money for folks who might be making before taxes, $30,000 or $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it really is who has the right to make your ethical and moral health care decisions. And people of faith who don't want their bosses making those decisions for them should be outraged by the arguments that Hobby Lobby is putting forth.
Jay, you've written extensively on this concerted effort to redefine religious liberty. Help our listeners understand what some of the possible outcomes could be from this Hobby Lobby case, depending on what the court decides.
So I'm going to answer in what may seem to be a roundabout way, but it's not. 30 years ago, the court had a case from Bob Jones University, which originally barred African Americans from applying, and later changed that policy, but still barred interracial dating and had separate housing, basically had segregation into the 1970s at Bob Jones University. The court said that the IRS could take away Bob Jones University's tax-exempt status, that you can't discriminate in the name of religion. Imagine if that case had gone the other way. Imagine if Bob Jones University were allowed today to maintain a racially segregationist policy at their university and still function as a tax-exempt charity. The landscape would be completely different. This is the same argument that we're facing now. If Hobby Lobby and other large corporations like it are able to exempt themselves from Obamacare on the basis of religion, they're going to be able to exempt themselves from all the other kinds of laws as well. And it's hard for me to see as an attorney, it's hard for me to see what the distinction would be between this case and another case that comes down the line, which does say, let's say, I believe that intermarriage is against my religion, therefore I won't let any multi-faith couples stay at my hotel. Or anything. I'm a Muslim, and I will not allow someone in my taxi cab to be drunk or to be intoxicated. So I'm going to be able to refuse people on whatever basis that I want based on my religion. Yeah. This just isn't really how democracy works, and yet we have gotten to the point where it may actually be validated by the Supreme Court.
Jay, is this case the tip of the spear in the culture wars right now? Where else do you see religious liberty language being misappropriated?
Well, it's used a lot. Not surprisingly, it's used in the same old fronts of the culture war that it's always been used in. Right? There are some who say this is about religious liberty. This is not about religious liberty. This is about fighting the culture war, using this as a tool to do so. So the main fronts are reproductive rights, contraception, abortion, and so forth, and LGBT rights, marriage, equality, non-discrimination, and so forth. The same kind of language that's being proposed in the Hobby Lobby case was in the Turn the Gays Away bill in Arizona, that if a corporation or their owners, rather, the corporation's owners professed a religious belief, that you couldn't sue them for discrimination, you couldn't sue them for anything else. And this is, I'm not, is it the tip of the spear, or is it the rear guard, the cannons at the back? The sort of arch-conservative right has lost the battle, not just legally, but culturally as well. There are people of faith all around the country who believe that their faith compels inclusion and acceptance, not just that it's okay to be gay, but that it's actually a positive moral value to build a world filled with love and with inclusion and acceptance. So they've lost the battle, and they're now trying to carve out spaces where the democratic process doesn't apply. And we saw this in the 1970s and 80s, and now we're seeing it all over again.
Jay, are the justices that sit in that high court as in touch as they ought to be with the far-reaching effects of this case?
I generally would say that they are. I think, the justices are always looking toward the future. I don't think that they're going to blunder into this decision, however it goes. And this is really going to come down to the moderates. It's going to come down a lot to just Justice Kennedy. And so you look at kind of his record on these kinds of issues. He tends to try to find some kind of a middle road, but it's tough that all of our hopes for liberty are basically riding on someone who doesn't usually find expansive definitions of liberty. Now, I don't think they're going to blunder in ignorance into this. Folks said before Citizens United that game would be a game changer. Sorry, that case would be a game changer. Mm-hmm. And that case was a game changer. Right. We saw $1 billion of corporate money enter the political world after that decision came down. It actually did. I wouldn't say that the sky fell exactly, but it did permanently change, at least so far, to the present day, it changed how politics is. There's a lot more super PAC money. There's a lot more negative ads. There's a lot more corporate voices out there in the political space. So I think if they go into this, they will see the change. They just may want to see that change.
Ordinarily, I would ask you how you think it's going to come out. I think I won't do that because we began by you saying you're afraid. I'm afraid. This one is almost too important to guess. A lot is at stake. And, Jay, you have helped us again, as you always do. Dr. Jay Michaelson is an author, activist, and public speaker. He has great insight on matters of religion and society. You may recall he's the author of God vs. Gay, The Religious Case for Equality, among other books he's written. You can follow his work at jmichaelson.net. It's always great to have you on this show. I hope that you'll let us come back to you on a follow-up, maybe even before we get the ruling, but certainly at the time of the ruling. You're always welcome right here on State of Belief Radio.
Thank you, Welton. And I'll put in one little quick pitch right here at the end, which is that Catholics for Choice is holding a rally right on the steps of the Supreme Court on Tuesday, starting around 9 in the morning. Everybody's going to be there from both sides, and we really need faith progressives to come out in force and in numbers to support justice in this case.
I will just say you're exactly right, and I hope some of our listeners will be there.